peace must be our goal and our guide. And all that we strive for as a human family, dignity and hope, progress and prosperity, depends on peace. But peace depends on us.
Very good afternoon to you, and thank you so much for finding time to be with us this afternoon. Just a few minutes past 3 p.m. here in Nairobi, and that is East African time. Just before I came on air, there is a live update right now from Sudan on the current situation and what is happening, and it's a press conference that is being led by the military leader in Sudan right now, General Abdel Fattah al-Burhan, and is trying to explain to the rest of the world what is happening and what necessitated the move that they took yesterday in removing the Prime Minister Abdallah Hamdok and the other side of the civilian leadership and placing the country under the state of emergency, and among other raft of measures we saw the army put in place yesterday. And so that press conference is continuing, and we shall have perhaps more about that in a subsequent bulletin. But the latest I heard from Sudan was that crowds of Sudanese citizens out on the streets of the capital Khartoum to protest for a second day against Monday's military coup. At least 10 people were reported killed and dozens injured, many of them as a result of soldiers opening fire on protesters. There is heavy security deployment, and units have blocked the bridges connecting the city. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken has called for the immediate restoration of Sudan's civilian rule without preconditions. Sudan's military seized the power on Monday, and soldiers have reportedly killed at least 7 people and wounded 18 others after firing on protesting crowds. The United States on Monday suspended $700 million in aid to Sudan after a military takeover and urged the immediate restoration of a civilian government. And of course, Antony Blinken said that the suspension concerned a $700 million package in economic support meant to assist Sudan's democratic transition following the ouster of a dictator 2 years ago. So that is the situation in Sudan. And as I told you there, General Abdel Fattah al-Burhan right now is addressing the world. And so we will have a comprehensive bulletin or discussion of what he's saying right now later on. And then we move on to Mali. And Mali has expelled the ECOWAS regional bloc's representative in the country as pressure mounts on it to provide definitive timeline on its transition to civilian rule. Hamadou Boli was summoned by the Foreign Affairs Ministry and notified of the government's decision, declaring him persona non grata in view of his actions that incompatible with his status, that is according to state-run TV in Mali. Mali has been at loggerheads with the regional body over demands to hold elections in February. The West African nation was suspended from ECOWAS in May after the interim leader Assimi Goïta, as colonel, carried out a second coup in less than a year. Prime Minister Choguel Maïga has indicated that the election could be delayed, citing concerns over credibility. There is concern that the Malian army's preoccupation with the political crisis continues to jeopardize its response to the security crisis that has continued to plague its northern and central regions. We head over to Nigeria, and reports from Nigeria's Niger state say at least 11 people were killed on Monday after gunmen on motorbikes attacked a mosque in Maza Kuka community. Many other worshippers were injured. Villagers said a large group of attackers stormed the mosque and opened fire as the victims were holding early morning prayers. Local police said one of the attackers was killed by security forces. The incident is just the latest in Niger state, which has witnessed a rise in violence. On May 30th, armed bandits abducted 136 students at the Islamic school in Tegina town, and in February, hundreds of school children were abducted in the same state. And then the latest is that the African Union plans to buy up to 110 million doses of COVID-19 vaccine from Moderna. The Moderna is prepared to deliver the first 15 million doses to Africa later this year as part of an agreement facilitated by the White House. An additional 35 million doses will be delivered in the first quarter of 2022 and up to 60 million doses in the second quarter. All doses are offered at Moderna's lowest tiered price. The company is also working on plans to allow it to fill doses of its COVID-19 vaccine in Africa as early as 2023, in parallel to building an mRNA vaccine manufacturing facility in Africa. And then we head over to Uganda, and the authorities in Uganda say a suicide bomber was behind an explosion on a bus in the capital Kampala on Monday. The attacker died in the explosion, and that is according to police spokesperson Fred Enanga, who said that today. He added that the attacker was on a wanted list and was a member of the Islamic militant group Allied Democratic Forces, ADF, which operates from the neighboring Democratic Republic of Congo. Several passengers were injured in the Monday's blast. Remember, on Saturday, another blast in a restaurant in Kampala killed one person and injured 3 others. And then we head over back to Nigeria, where now the United Nations has raised concerns on the detainment of Nnamdi Kanu, the leader of the indigenous people of Biafra, by the Department of State Services and his treatment in their custody. This was contained in the mandates of the Special Rapporteur on Torture and Other Cruel, Inhumane or Degrading Treatment or Punishments. Now, the Working Group on Arbitrary Detention, the Working Group on Enforced on Involuntary Disappearance, the Special Rapporteur on the right of everyone to the enjoyment of the highest attainable standard of physical and mental health, and Special Rapporteur on Minority Issues, and the Special Rapporteur on the promotion and protection of human rights and fundamental freedoms while countering terrorism. In the document, which was obtained by local media in Nigeria, the UN said it received information on allegations of enforcement disappearance, arbitrary detention, torture, and ill treatment of Nnamdi Kanu by security officials, as well as his illegal rendition to Nigeria to face trial for terrorism-related charges, which were believed to be linked to his leadership of the indigenous people of Biafra. It added that since his rendition to Nigeria, Kanu has been denied family visits, confidential access to a lawyer, and necessary medical treatment for his underlying illness. The mandate read in part, while we do not prejudge the accuracy of these allegations, we would like to express our concern in relation to the enforced disappearance of Nnamdi Kanu from June 19, 2021 until his reappearance at the Nigerian Federal High Court in Abuja on June 29, 2021, and his reported illegal rendition from Nairobi to Abuja without judicial process. And then we head over to Zimbabwe. And the Southern Africa Regional Bloc SADC has called for the unconditional and immediate lifting of all sanctions against Zimbabwean government. A statement by Malawian President Lazarus Chakwera, who is the chairperson of the organization that brings together 16 countries. Mr. Chakwera said the prolonged sanctions have hindered Zimbabwe's prospects of economic recovery, human security, and sustainable growth. Zimbabwe has been under economic sanctions from the US and the European Union, targeting specific individuals and companies where the government blames for the country's economic problems. The SADC statement said Zimbabwe and the regional bloc were committed to talks with the relevant players to enhance democracy, governance, and human rights. The EU and the US have cited a lack of progress in democratic and human rights reforms, as well as restrictions on press freedoms. And then we go to Egypt. And the Egyptian President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi has announced that he is ending the state of emergency, which has been in force since April 2017 in the North African country. In a Facebook post, President Sisi announced that he would not be extending the state of emergency because Egypt had become an oasis of security and stability. He imposed the strict measure 4 years ago in the aftermath of the bombings of 2 churches in the northern cities of Alexandria and Tanta. It gave police wider powers, curtailed civil liberties, and put civilians on trial before military courts. Egypt is no longer state of emergency. The late President Hosni Mubarak imposed one following the assassination of his predecessor, Anwar Sadat, in 1981. It remained in place until it was toppled 30 years later. That is just amazing. And Mr. Sisi has been Egypt's president since 2014, a year after he led the military overthrow of Islamist President Mohamed Morsi. He was re-elected in 2018 in a re-election which was boycotted by the opposition and condemned by human rights groups. So Egypt has been under a state of emergency for 4 years now. And before that, Anwar Sadat had put the country under state of emergency for 30 years. Okay, ponder over that. And then we move on to Somalia. We are fighting. I think what happened in Sudan must have triggered that move by Morsi, what we see now happening. So I think that must have been a red flag. And if he didn't do any different, so what we see happen right now in Sudan could very well befall him there in Egypt. And we are head over to Somalia now. We're fighting in Somalia's Galmudug state between the Somali army and its former ally. The Al-Sunnah wal Jamaa militia has killed 120 people over the past 3 days, a senior ASWJ official said on Monday. Analysts and residents have expressed fears that the fighting is derailing the former allies from their common effort to defeat the Al-Qaeda-linked Al-Shabaab insurgency. Ahmed Shire Falagle, Galmudug State's information minister, said 16 government soldiers were killed and 45 injured during the 3 days of fighting. He did not know how many casualties the other side had suffered, but said that the armed groups had been cornered and government forces hope to finish them in the coming hours. The clashes erupted on Saturday and continued until Monday in the central state's second largest district of Gurisel. The United Nations said in a statement that the fighting has displaced at least 100,000 people. And of course, the group of moderate Sufi Muslims has been at the forefront in the fight against Al-Shabaab. ASWJ says the federal government has failed to end Al-Shabaab insurgency and that security is worsening in Galmudug state. The government accuses ASWJ of operating without its consent, a claim the armed group has not denied. Fighting between the two groups broke out in February 2020 when several people were killed after soldiers attacked a house where ASWJ leaders had gathered. And then President Mohamed Farmajo now wants AMISOM to leave the country at the end of their mandate this year, and yet look at the state of security in that country, as if left by himself, Farmajo can actually, assure Somalis of their security. Okay, so we end in South Sudan, and children's rights group have called on South Sudan Army forces to end recruitment of children into their ranks. Last week, the Dalia Institute of Children, Peace and Security convened a high-level roundtable discussion on the implementation of the Comprehensive Action Plan to end and prevent all 6 grave violations against children signed by the government of South Sudan in 2020. In June this year, the agency held a similar meeting with army commanders from the SSPDF, SPLAIO, and SSOA in prevention of recruitment and use of children in the armed forces in the country. As part of the effective implementation of the action plan signed in February 2020, the SSPDF says it has established 3 high-level committees at both national and state level to ensure that children do not associate with the forces. The high-level roundtable discussion on the implementation of the Comprehensive Action Plan to end and prevent grave violation against children in South Sudan comes just a week after a report suggesting that 18 children were recently associated with the SSPDF in Lakes State. The children are believed to have come from Lakes, Northern Bahr-el-Ghazal and Warab states. But in July this year, the head of SSPDF Child Protection, Major General Chaplain Hamis Edward, told iRadio that the number of children associated with armed forces in the country have reduced. I don't know. You wonder whether South Sudan has learned anything and what the country has gone through. And we know child soldiers or children being recruited in the armed forces has been a big thing when you look at not just in South Sudan, but a lot of civil wars and war-ravaged countries in this continent. And South Sudan is just one prime example. I think of why are you still recruiting children in your army? Well, you have so many of adults who would wish to join the army and go serve the nation. Why do you have to have children as young as, there's a time I was reading another report that was presented to the United Nations where there were children as young as 14 years fighting and being recruited to the army. What country is this? Why do we still have children under the age of 18 serving, being recruited in the army in South Sudan? I think the United Nations needs to do more. Okay, very well. Okay, so now, of course, thank you. I don't know where you're watching me from this afternoon, but of course, I'm sure majority of my viewers this afternoon perhaps would want to know what is happening in Sudan, as well as this new statement that has been released by the United Nations concerning the detainment of Nnamdi Kanu, the leader of indigenous people of Biafra. So I've read through part of the, the statement, and this was contained in the mandates of several committees there in the United Nations, the Special Rapporteur on Torture and Other Cruel, Inhumane, or degrading treatment of punishments. It's a whole list of this office, a committee. And in the document, of course, that has been seen by local media, even there in Nigeria, the UN said that it has received information on allegations of enforced disappearance, arbitrary detention, torture, and ill treatment of Nnamdi Kanu by security officials, as well as his illegal rendition to Nigeria to face trial for terrorism-related charges. And we know Nnamdi Kanu appeared in a high court last week in Nigeria. Of course, he pleaded not guilty to all 7 counts of what he's being accused of. And so this matter has found its way to the United Nations. And I think it has attracted, attention to that magnitude. But I wonder why it has taken so long since when he was, taken back to Nigeria, since June till now. But I guess it's a good thing that it has found its way to the United Nations. And now they're raising concerns and they're demanding answers from the Nigerian government. And it, of course, it added that since his rendition to Nigeria, Kanu has been denied family visits. You're supposed to be allowed to access your lawyer in private. Your family members are should be able to visit you when you've been incarcerated or when you're still in detention. But that has not been the case for Nnamdi Kanu. We saw even when he was being presented in court last week, the amount of security that the government of Nigeria had deployed. You would think this is an actual terrorist. Well, forget the fact that terrorists are just around Nigeria killing and maiming and doing all that. And that sheikh I was talking to you here yesterday, Ahmad Gumi, who even came out and wrote this statement that he issued to the media that declaring bandits and terrorists will come with a prize. He's the one who's been in touch with these terrorists, with these bandits who've been kidnapping even people in Nigeria. But he gets to walk around, free. So you can tell the inequalities when it comes to how the government of Nigeria chooses to address certain cases and certain section of people, while it refuses to address the issue of insecurity and hold the people culpable, responsible. In the other case, you see how they're dealing with Nnamdi Kanu, and we've seen how that has played out. So anyway, you're supposed to be allowed for at least your family members to visit you while you're in custody. You're supposed to be allowed to have access to your lawyer and talk in confidence, all right, and necessary medical treatment, because we do understand from the reports that he does have some underlying health conditions that needs, proper medical attention to. He has been denied that. So the United Nations now is saying this is not okay and is asking for answers from the government of Nigeria. And so hopefully the mandate, part of the mandate, let me just read you what this mandate said from the United Nations Special Rapporteur. It says that while we do not prejudge the accuracy of these allegations, We would like to express our concern in relation to the enforced disappearance of Nnamdi Kanu from June 19, 2021 until his reappearance at the Nigerian Federal High Court in Abuja on June 29, 2021 and his reported illegal rendition from Nairobi to Abuja without judicial process. So they're saying the whole process and by how Kanu found himself in Nigeria was not okay, was not in line with even the international laws, and so they're demanding to find answers from the state services, from the government, and more so they want to know why are you treating Nnamdi Kanu the way you're treating him, in custody, as much as you've been arrested and you're under, state custody, you still have some level of rights that should be exercised until you've been found guilty, and then even when you've been incarcerated, really, even after you've been found guilty, you still enjoy some level of, human rights. You still have some rights that the state must protect and must ensure that you are okay. Okay, so that has not been the case. And so I don't know if the government of Nigeria now will be willing to respond to this latest, concerns that is being raised now by the United Nations mandates of the Special Rapporteur on Torture and Other Cruel, Inhumane or Degrading Treatment on Punishment, and the Working Group on Arbitrary Detention, and the Working Group on Enforced and Involuntary Disappearance, and of course the Special Rapporteur on the right of everyone to the enjoyment of the highest attainable standard of physical and mental health. So they sat down, and I think this is a situation that they have been observing. And so I'm really interested to see how this case now will be moving forward, and now that it has gained the traction that it deserves, now that it has gained that level of concern, the United Nations. I'd like to see how this case will be treated moving forward. Are we likely to see the government of Nigeria perhaps treating Nnamdi Kanu much better now, even through this trial that has just started, or what will happen now? Okay, so the last time he appeared in court last week, and I guess you guys said his scheduled, the case is scheduled to start, is it next month? I'm not sure, you can remind me of that, but that is the latest there from the United Nations in regards to Nnamdi Kanu and his illegal detention, because that is what the United Nations is saying. And what else did I want us to talk about? Okay, we've talked about the recruitment of children in South Sudan, and also the latest from Sudan. As I told you there, I think the Army General Abdul Fattah el-Burhan was leading an international press conference, because I saw all the international media houses present there, and of course he was trying to explain the army's position and what really transpired to what has led to Sudan to be where it is today and what necessitated that coup. So he's just trying to give a raft of reasons and excuses, to be honest with you. And I think this is because the US pulled some funding yesterday that is supposed to be giving to Sudan in a tune of $700 million. And Sudan's economy right now is in tatters and they need that money. So I think this must have pushed them to come and try to just do a damage control. I don't know if it's too late. I don't know if what will happen. The whereabouts of the Prime Minister Abdallah Hamdok are still not known, and other government officials from the civilian side are still not known. So I don't know how this will work out. Oh, you're telling me the next court date is in November 10th. All right, thank you so much for that. So not too far, maybe in about what? Just over 2 weeks or so. All right, thank you so much for that. Thank you so much for that, Chimara Emeka. Thank you so much. So, all right. So, are you happy that now the United Nations, this case has gotten its attention and it's talking about it? And maybe do you think now moving forward, maybe a solution will be gotten? Maybe the government of Nigeria will release Nnamdi Kanu. What do you think will happen moving forward on this one? Okay. All right. Thank you so much. So, the details of that press conference from Sudan, I don't have it with me right now, but I'll bring it to you tomorrow. God willing, if you make it to tomorrow, I'll bring you the details of that. And then this renewed fightings in Somalia. There was another militia, but it was friendly to the government. And the government forces in Mogadishu decided to start fighting this militia. This militia was on the government side in the fight against Al-Shabaab. And for some reason, Farmajo's forces decided to start attacking this militia. It's called Al-Husuna wal Jamaa. Now, you are a government and you have a militia on your side. What kind of a country is that? And that is what is happening also in South Sudan. We have the government forces. Then on top of that, we have militias supporting the government. Now you understand why things are the way they are in South Sudan when it comes to insecurity and or lack thereof. So that is the same case in Somalia. So this group, it's a militia, but it has been fighting with together. It's a group from the moderate Sufi Muslims, and it's been fighting together with government forces. And for some reason, the government forces started to attack them because they're saying these people are operating in this country without consent. But they've been helping you now for a long time. And so fighting has broken out. And we know Somalia is supposed to be going for its elections. Was it this week or next week? I can't remember. So that now is at jeopardy. So we don't know what will happen. And to think that President Farmajo has called for the AMISOM army to leave, troops to leave the country, and it's not happy that the African Union and the UN also agreed to the AMISOM's mandate to be extended past 2021 through a hybrid kind of a situation. President Farmajo is not happy about that. Matter of fact, he sent out a press release over the weekend. But you see how chaotic the place is already is. So I don't know if Somalia would be left to itself. Farmajo, are you able to really assure the people of Somalia of their security? If you have militias fighting back in your government, because your national army cannot, within itself, assure the people of Somalia of their security, are you going to be able to fight, Al-Shabaab really? What will happen? So in this latest clashes has claimed about 120 lives, and that was between Saturday and yesterday. And it has continued. And so this is the place where Al-Shabaab is just sitting down and I think re-strategizing. And before we know it, we thought Al-Shabaab was being defeated. We will embolden them. So President Farmajo and your government, I think you need to rethink, on how you even approach the security situation in Somalia. Okay. All right. Thank you so much. I think I'll have to leave now. Maybe I read a bit of your comments before I go. Right. So Chuma Nelson Ume, you're saying Nigeria government don't obey court orders. They kidnapped Nnamdi Kanu from Kenya without due process. Nigeria should release him unconditionally. And Emeka, thank you so much, Emeka. I always talk about Biafran stories here, whether they're good or bad. I always bring to the world the attention of what is happening in Nigeria, in Biafra, in Cameroon, in the Anglophone, in South Africa, in Lesotho, in whatever. We are a Pan-African television station, so Africa is our business, okay? So we have a responsibility to tell the world what is happening, okay? So thank you so much for your time and for watching. Okay, so we do have, let me see, St. Stephen. Okay, Chuku, you're saying the UN should question Kenya government regarding Nnamdi Kanu. And I think Kanu's team got a lawyer from Kenya here who already placed a case in the Kenyan courts. I will not even talk about it. We'll just leave that and see how it plays out, because when there's a case in court here, we don't talk about it until it's been determined by the court, all right? So if you see me not talk about it, that is because, all right, otherwise I will be interfering with the court process, and I do not want to be found in contempt, all right? Very well. Okay. And Onyeka, you're saying that is some good news. So you think by the case getting the traction it has, by the US coming out and saying what is happening in Nigeria is not okay. How Nnamdi Kanu is being treated in the Nigerian jail, and his human rights, his rights are being abused by the Nigerian government. The UN has said it's not okay. So you think at this point perhaps there's some glimmer of hope? Maybe now things could be different. Are you guys envisioning a situation perhaps the government will decide to release him so that he could return to the UK? We know that he does have a dual nationality. You know, so do you think the Nigerian government will even do anything about it? Because we know from the past, as one of you has just highlighted, the government of Nigeria is notorious, very much notorious, in not complying with even court orders, with its own laws, with its own constitution. It's notorious. We saw in the case of Sowore, all right, I hope I've said his name right. The court ordered for him to be released. The government detained him for a couple of months until it decided to release him later. So there's no telling, but they're notorious of not complying with the, whatever, the constitution itself, because if you cannot comply with the order that has been made by the court, which interprets the law, then basically you have refused to obey the constitution, basically, because it all boils down to that. Okay. Thank you so much. I will see you guys here tomorrow, and perhaps the Nigerian government would have responded to that request by the United Nations and that concern by the United Nations, and I will let you know what the General Abdel Fattah el-Burhan in Sudan has said. I think he's continuing with that press conference, and also we'll have other conversations, God willing. Thank you so much for watching. My name is Miriam Ugotu. Enjoy the rest of your day. Bye-bye for now.
Peace must be our goal and our guide. And all that we strive for as a human family, dignity and hope, progress and prosperity, depends on peace. But peace depends on us.